Hello and welcome to Real Chat with Kat, the podcast dedicated to igniting your entrepreneurial spirit and empowering you to conquer new horizons. In this podcast, we chat with inspiring entrepreneurs on their journey to success through some amazingly insightful and expansive conversations. These episodes thrive on thought-provoking chats where our guests fearlessly explore their path to success, sharing their experiences, failures, and triumphs. No topic is off limits as we deep dive into the talked about and not so talked about pieces it takes to build a business, overcome limiting beliefs, deal with personal struggles, and everything in between that shapes our lives and our businesses. I'm your host, Kat Polsinelli, creator and founder at The Lotus Effect, where we believe that success is not just about strategies and tactics, it's about cultivating a powerful mindset and creating customized business operations that align with you and your true purpose. Whether it's mastering time management, improving productivity, enhancing leadership skills, or simply fostering a growth-oriented mindset, we'll provide you with the tools and strategies to flourish in both your business and personal life. I'm so excited to have you join us today in this episode, so get ready to feel empowered and inspired as we learn together and from one another on how to rise above challenges, break through limitations, and unlock our full potential. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of Real Chat with Kat. I am so excited to have you here with me today, and I have such an awesome guest, you guys. I've been waiting to chat with her for like the longest time. We did a podcast swap a while back, and I was on her podcast, which was so much fun. So we are now finally getting to reconnect and jump right in. So Lisa, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. Yeah, I loved the conversation that we had on my show. It was so fun. And I've really been looking forward to this. So I'm so glad to be here today.
I am so excited. Lisa is just an amazing human being, you guys. I love her energy. I love what she does. I love following your content, by the way. And I learned so
appreciate that.
much. I learned so much. So as we dive right in, do us all a favor then and tell us who you are, what it is that you do, and what got you into your space.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's a bit of a twisty turny journey, but isn't that the truth for all of us?
Oh,
Right?
yeah.
I am Lisa. I am a disruptor. I'm an innovator. And that started when I was little, although I didn't know it at the time. Those of us who sort of grew up in and around the same time, 70s, 80s, there was lots of notions about what it meant to be good and to be a good girl. And I was an only child. And so I did all of the things to make sure that I was as perfect as I could possibly be. I followed all the rules. I did all the things. High school, university, married, career, kids. I followed the road. Very specifically, took all the directions and was like, yes, I will do that. And I do not regret any of that. I have a beautiful partner who I love deeply. I love my children. They are amazing. And when I found myself, it was sort of like most people around COVID, having some extra time to settle in and realize I have just been following directions and I haven't actually looked inside to see, what do I really want? What do I want the rest of my life to be? Because I still remember this morning so clearly. I was sitting on the back deck and my kids were heading into their later teen years. And you know how parenting really starts to change at that stage. And COVID was really hard on the education system is tricky to begin with, and COVID really, really changed a lot of things. And I was really starting to have physical manifestations of the stress that I was experiencing in my workplace. My hair was falling out. I was having anxiety attacks at work, all of the things. And so there was this morning where I was sitting on my deck drinking a cup of tea, and I was like, I'm on the other side of everything I ever imagined for my life. Or now, as I think of it, like the directions ran out. And
Mm.
suddenly I was like, well, but what now? Because I'm still like, I am this person. Like, I feel youthful and vibrant and all of those things, but there's not a lot of story or example about what happens in this phase of womanhood. And so that was a pretty big realization and rocked my system a lot. And eventually I decided that education was no longer a place for me. It was just it was taking more than I had to give. And I was like, and it's time for me to decide what I really want to do. And so I loved coaching because the last decade of my career I actually was a coach and provided professional development for other educators. And I loved that aspect of it. And so I started in the empty nest coaching space because there's tons of support for young moms, which is essential, right? Like mom and baby groups, all those things. It's so important. And life changes just as much at this end, but there's not nearly as much support. So that's where I started, was in that sort of empty nest space. And because I like to take a holistic approach to everything, there are always also physical manifestations, physical symptoms that people were talking about. And I was experiencing them myself. I was like, what is this? And then I was like, I think this could be perimenopause. And I wanted to learn more. So I took a menopause coaching certification program and was completely blown away by how much we do not know about our bodies and how much the changes that happen hormonally for us, and not only hormonally, like there are hormonal shifts that are happening, but also a lot of things in our lives are changing at this phase as well. So there's this really intense intersection that we just don't know about or talk about. And that is what brought me to where I'm at now.
And I think this is so cool too, because I've learned so much from you and just following your content on, all of the different things in menopause. I mean, I knew a little bit about it because my mom had had a hysterectomy when I was younger, and it threw her into early menopause. So she was like in her 30s, but then she turned around and went back through it again. And I was just like, what? But the only thing that I feel like, which is really interesting because when you think about women, I feel like people are like, oh, well, they know about their things. Boy, I don't know about you, but there's a
Mhm.
lot I was really clueless about. Like I have just
Yeah, like
now,
most things.
yeah, like it's
Yeah.
really interesting because people are like, oh, but that's what goes on with you. Yeah, no, we don't know what the hell's going on either. But it's really funny because like you hear people talk about it. It's a word that's thrown around. You know that it's coming, but generally, what it was always associated when I hear it is like hot flashes and moods all over the place. Like
Mhm.
the end. That's kind of like the epiphany of anything menopause. Then you talked about perimenopause, and I was like, hold on, time out. What in the crap is this? Like, what? There's more. There's more phases. There's more stages. Like, it's really interesting how much even we as women, and it's our bodies that are going through it, that we don't recognize or are aware of what's going on. And I don't know if that's one, because we just aren't educated, or if it's two, because like you said, there are so many things that are going on in our lives generally around that time that we just don't have time to focus on it, or if it's like a combination of both, or there's, a third thing. Like, do you tend to see reasons
Yeah.
for that?
Yes, there's a big reason. There's a big number three, and that is women's bodies were not even included in medical studies until 1993.
What?
Yeah.
That's
I
really,
so when you are doing, I understand why, and it's a huge issue. So when you are looking at doing a medical study and you want consistent results and you need a stable cells to take a look at, that's not women, because our hormones fluctuate so much through our cycle that we are not consistent in a sample.
oh.
So it's complicated to study us when you are operating within the traditional research model, essentially.
Okay.
So what was assumed was that women were essentially small men with breasts and uteruses. It's like this has actually just recently come out. So things like Ambien, which is a sleep medication,
Mm-hmm.
the dosage for men and women is the same because we were just assumed to be smaller men. And over time, once Ambien sort of became more used in the population, there was this spike in female car accidents that was traced back to the fact that Ambien has a much higher impact on women than it does on men and stays in our system for a lot longer. So women were getting up, driving to work in the morning, still significantly under the impact of that drug.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
Yeah. So, and this is all information that I am also learning like as we go because of that question. Why don't we know about what's going on in our own bodies? And that is the big third reason, because we haven't been studied. The
Mm.
research around that is really only just starting to evolve. Dr. Mary Claire Haver is one of my go-tos. She's one of the leading researchers in this area and practitioners. And Dr. Lisa Mosconi is also doing some really interesting work. And here's another example of how like there had never been any published studies about the impact of estrogen and depleting estrogen on the brain until June of 2024. And it was Dr. Lisa Mosconi who decided, she was like, I want to do this research. There wasn't even a tracer developed that was what you need to trace the flow of the pathway of estrogen through the brain when you're doing imaging. That didn't even exist. She had to develop that before she could even do the study. And the research showed that as our estrogen levels decline, estrogen neuroreceptors on our brain actually increase, because they're like our brains, every organ system in our body needs estrogen. So as estrogen's declining, the brain's like, wait a minute, we need that. We must need more receptors. So receptors are increasing, estrogen is decreasing. So of course we're having things like brain fog and word recall issues and generalized memory things, because our literal receptors are not being fulfilled so that they can fire in the way that they could before.
That is so interesting to me. Sorry, I'm kind of like mind blown right
Yeah.
here. I'm just like taking it all in.
I know, sorry, it's
Like,
a lot. It's a lot.
It's not something that you think about. I mean, you hear about estrogen and the importance of it, and I've always associated it with one, just being a woman, two, it's to balance some things, and three, it has to do with your bones. Like that's that's
Right.
like there's not much that's talked about in it. And I know that like even when I was on birth control. Like that was something that like I had to go back and forth with my gynecologist, was like, can I do this one? Well, no, this one doesn't work. Well, this one has more estrogen. Okay, well, we need to do this one that has progesterone. I'm like, I don't know what any of these words mean. So cool. Just like tell me
Mhm.
what I need to take and like let's just go with it. But like thinking about it now, obviously I was like, in my 20s, so I just didn't understand any of that. I was like, okay, whatever you say. But like thinking
Mhm.
about it now, I'm like, I wonder how many other people are even now, or in their 40s and 50s, that like we just hear what people say and we hear the word and we're like, I mean, I get that it's a word that I'm supposed to know because it's something to do with my body, but like I trust you, so like just figure it out for me, kind of a
Yeah.
scenario. And I think about how much trouble that has gotten probably so many people into at the
Mhm.
same time. I didn't realize it's been that long since we started being studied. Like that blows my mind when I think
Yeah.
about it. I mean,
Me too. I was 16 in 1993. I was 16 years old. And to really think about the fact that we had not been included in medical research and trials until that point it is astounding to me. But it does really explain why there is so little knowledge about what happens in a woman's body. And outside of reproduction, right? So women's bodies are
Yeah.
pretty understood, and there's lots of knowledge around reproduction. But once we are past that, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Because in the society that we live in, childbearing women are where it's at in terms of support, right? And
Yeah.
that is what I feel like it is the work of women of our generation to say, we have incredible value outside of that as well. Like we retain all of our value, and we have so much to give to ourselves and to the community around us, and we
Mm-hmm.
deserve to have quality of life. One of the other newest statistics that's coming out is that yes, women tend to live longer than men, but their quality of life is significantly less. So their health quality is significantly less than men during
Hmm.
that time. So women are being diagnosed more frequently with Alzheimer's, with fibromyalgia, with frozen shoulder is one of the main, like it's a significant symptom of perimenopause. And yes, we're living longer, but our health quality is not nearly as good because the medical community doesn't have the knowledge that's necessary to maintain our quality of health long term.
Mm. That's so interesting. And you know what's really funny too is like I've noticed lately, which is funny, on my feed that there have been some more things that are populating. Like I'm realizing that there's a lot of people talking about how women have been misdiagnosed with anxiety and depression and different
Yes.
things when it was like ADHD or it was this or it was that. And which then made me go back to my childhood and I'm like, I know I probably have ADHD. But mine was considered a
Yeah.
superpower, right? Like I had the ability to do my homework with listening to music and I could watch TV and then I could tell you everything afterward. But like I was a girl, so because it was more controlled and not what we tend to see in boys, which is the hyperness, like nobody thought anything of it. Like I remember my parents being like, that's such a gift, right? Like, so like I was like, okay, that's freaking cool. And I
Yeah.
still use it to this. It's still a gift. It's still a gift. I'm just gonna say that right now because it has
Absolutely.
helped me survive so many things when I have 10,000 things going on, or when I was in my abusive relationship or dealing with my kids as a single parent. Like it has saved me. But I wonder how many women out there have been
Mhm.
misdiagnosed for so long, taking a medication that's not working. And we're already hard on ourselves enough as it is. And so then we get into the overthinking and, well, what's wrong with me? And why isn't this working? And why am I broken? And like, we just go down this rabbit hole and then we end
Mhm.
up having issues and stuff later on. And I'm just curious, I am interested to see what ends up coming out down the road of like how these medications and other things that we were put on end up affecting us and in regards to our quality of life or how we're doing when we're at a certain age and how we can now shift that for our younger generation. Like it's just really interesting to me,
Yes.
all of these things that I'm starting to see that are coming out. Like I have sat and watched so many things that I'm like, oh my God, really? I didn't what?
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it's mind blowing. And I guess that makes sense now that you're saying that we weren't really studied until the 90s. But I didn't I that one did not come up. So thank you, Instagram,
Mhm.
because you failed me on no, I'm just kidding. Failed me on teaching me. But it's really interesting. So like I'm curious, with the research that you're doing and the people that you are working with, like, are you already seeing an overlap on like misdiagnosis from before and how that is affecting them now? And does that carry over into what it's like for them to have perimenopause or be in menopause, or how does it affect that differently? Or is that really kind of a case by case?
Everything is case by case because the impacts of perimenopause and menopause are totally different for every single woman. So my go-to is like the person in front of me, I'm listening really deeply to that person because their lived experience, their symptoms are going to be completely different from the person who I saw an hour ago. And that's really important. And individualized support is really key in this time because you are absolutely right. Things like ADHD have very different symptomology in women than they do in men. Same with heart attack symptoms, stroke symptoms. They're very different for women than they are in men. And what we know as the signs and symptoms are the way it impacts men. And the mental health component of perimenopause, I also just want to like roll back for 1 second and just say so that we're super clear, like
Yeah.
menopause is actually 1 day.
What?
Yeah.
Hold on.
So menopause itself is 1 day because it is the day when you realize you have not had a cycle for 12 full months. And that is when you are in menopause. Everything
Okay.
prior to that is perimenopause, and everything after that is postmenopause. And postmenopause is from that day of that 1 day until the end of your life. So there's like that can be up to a third, and perimenopause can last up to a decade. And there are age ranges, but it can start in your mid 30s. It's entirely possible. So, one of the other intersections that's happening that when you were talking earlier made me think about women who have young children and are experiencing postpartum depression. If they're in their
Mm.
late 30s, or even just like that is its own element. And if you are in your late 30s, early 40s, and you're having young children, it's entirely possible that you are also perimenopausal,
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
right? Yeah. So the exhaustion, the mood swings, the all of those things that we experience after we have a baby, there's a multitude of things that could be impacting that. And so being aware is the key so that you can advocate for yourself. Because the other issue is, yes, research is beginning to happen, change is beginning to happen, but in any institution and the healthcare system, I'm in Canada, you're the US, like it's all an institution that is
Hmm.
very slow moving. So ideally, candidates who are in medical school at this point are getting more information than they did. But the majority of folks who went through medical school received a sum total of maybe 30 minutes on menopause and perimenopause and how it impacts women.
Wow.
So there are huge implications around that. And when you're talking about the mental health aspect, that is one of them. Like women will say, like, I've been diagnosed with anxiety and I'm on an anti-anxiety pill or medication. I don't really feel like it's working particularly well. So then we have the conversation of like, well, what else are you experiencing?
Hmm.
Because increased anxiety and depression can absolutely be related to perimenopause. And if that is the root cause, anxiety medication may help for a time, it may not, because the root cause is actually the fluctuating estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone that's happening in your body. And so, in that case, it's entirely possible that menopause hormone therapy will actually be more effective than the anti anxiety medication.
Mm.
But that's really nuanced and needs really careful discussion with a really skilled practitioner who understands a woman's body. But
Hmm.
knowing that information is really important because we do have to advocate for ourselves so much at this juncture in time,
Yeah.
which sucks because we're already exhausted and experiencing brain fog. And it's like, could you just please help me? But that is our
Yeah.
reality right now. And we can, like, part of the advocacy is creating a space for women coming behind us that will be so much better and will
Hmm.
support them through their entire journey of development from their first period through to post menopause.
Yeah. And I want to repeat this because I feel like people need to hear this. listeners, you need to hear this. You need to advocate for yourself. I mean, regardless of if you are male or female, if you are a husband of someone who's noticing that their wife is like, advocate. Like, I
Yeah.
cannot speak that enough. Especially being in the medical field and realizing, like, I mean, doctors are humans, they screw up, right? You
Yeah.
know your body better than your doctor does. Your doctor may understand to an extent, but if you are paying attention to what your body is feeling, if you're paying attention to the symptoms that you're having and you're able to then conversate about that, you know what is going on with your body 10 times more than your doctor can read from a book and say, I get that, but in these medical studies, like that is one thing that frustrated me being in the medical field. And that was when I really started doing my own research and advocating for not only me, but my children as well, of like, I hear what you're
Mhm.
saying, but I also know that there's this, and being comfortable with asking questions. I think that a lot of us we're taught and we've been taught for decades that like you're supposed to trust your doctor. They go to school for that. That's why, okay, well, heads up, FYI, not everybody that goes to school and is a doctor makes A's and B's. I'm just saying, like, nothing against any doctors who maybe weren't great in school and are amazing as doctors now, but they they can be trusted to an extent.
Yes.
And if you cannot have a conversation with them, if you cannot explain to them what is going on and then actively ask questions versus blindly saying, okay, I mean, if that's what you think, that's where things need to come in. And so I love this, and that's why I wanted to make sure we repeated, like, advocate for
Mhm.
yourself, advocate for your family, advocate for your spouse, advocate, ask questions, because they are humans doing something that they believe they're good at as well, but they can screw up just like we can. And
Yes.
especially in this topic, and I am learning, like, I'm going to call my mom afterwards and have so many conversations, like you have no
Great.
clue.
I
um
love that. That's the best. Yeah.
but it's like there are so many things that are undiscovered, undiscussed, undiagnosed that we are still trying to figure out. So let me ask you this then. For people that are hearing this and are like, I've realized that the medication I'm taking isn't necessarily working, or I'm realizing that maybe I should have a little bit of a different conversation. Do you have any tips, tricks, or ways that people can go about things, or things that maybe they could be aware of that they can then tell their doctor to kind of help put them in the right vicinity of the direction that they need to go?
Yeah, for sure. So I actually wrote a guide for how to advocate for yourself with medical practitioners. So I'll send the link to you and we can make sure that that's in the show notes because that's a
Yes.
really like
Yes.
simple, and it has some research that I've linked to it as well. So you can share that with your practitioners and say, like, here's some of the research that supports what I'm
Oh,
saying.
I love that.
It's like you said, we've been trained to believe that the medical practitioners, doctors in particular, are infallible. And it is so important to remember that they are humans and they receive the training that they did. And some continue to learn and grow, and some don't, just like every other profession in the world. And
Hmm.
so, like you said, the advocacy part is so important. The other, some of the other practical things that you can do are just start writing down the things that you notice. So if you are having night sweats, like write down when those happen. If you are having hot flushes, write down when those happen. And while I'm on that topic, so this is something that like I'm really passionate about. Um, hot sweats, uh, hot flushes, and night sweats are often the butt of the joke when we are talking about menopause, right?
Yep.
They are actually vasomotor events. They are it's cardiovascular work that's happening in your system where your cardiovascular system is knocking on from the inside out saying there are things happening in here, we are not working the way that we did before, and it's really important that you pay attention. So
Mm.
those two symptoms, if you are having them, make sure you have a conversation with your healthcare practitioner because it is your cardiovascular system talking to you.
Wow.
And that's the other really important thing. The way I feel passionately about positioning any perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause symptoms is that they are messages from your body.
Hmm.
If you go into someone's office and you talk about your symptoms and they say, well, it's just you're aging. That's just the way it is now. That, my friends, is the wrong answer. There is so much that we can do to increase our quality of life, but we absolutely have to listen to the symptoms that we're having, write them down, pay attention, and then have those conversations with people who are really skilled, who can say, oh yeah, so you probably need to increase your protein intake. There are so many, so there's sort of 5 pillars in this standard of care for perimenopause and menopause, postmenopausal women: nutrition, movement, stress management, sleep, and then there's the pharmacological pillar, which is menopause hormone therapy. And that one causes anxiety for so many people because for a long time, there was a lot of misinformation that is deeply ingrained now that estrogen is dangerous for women and that it causes breast cancer. And that has been disproven over and over, and over again. And so menopause hormone therapy can be a really important part of any holistic treatment plan. It's not the answer, however. It's one part. Those other pieces also need to be in place to experience that increased quality of health.
Oh, I love that. There's so much information here. So much. But it's phenomenal though, because again, we tend to think that our mothers knew and their mothers knew, and it was passed down. But in reality, I feel like a lot of us are just as clueless as the rest of the world because it's just not talked about. It was, like you said, a lot of it was swept under the rug, or it just became a part of it. So it's like, oh, that's what it is. And you just like blew it off. And it's really interesting to see so many more women who are starting to come out and say, yeah, but something else is going on, or something else needs to change. Like, I love that we are getting to a place where we are getting back in touch with our bodies and starting to ask questions. I mean, I think about when I learned about my period. Like, we didn't really have a conversation about it. It was just like, you use these and
Mm-hmm.
then you monitor it. And I was like, what does that even mean? Right? Oh, 21 to
Yeah.
30 something day. Like, it was all like I had to figure it out. And like, I'm still learning things. I don't have mine anymore, but I'm still
Oh,
learning
yeah.
things that people are like, oh, you have the follicle period and you have it. I'm like, do you know how helpful that would have been to know
Yeah.
the weeks that I should have been like, don't touch me, don't come near me. Like, do you know how many men we could have saved? I'm just saying, guys. But
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
so crazy when you think about it, how complex we really are, and
Absolutely.
how much people are now starting to really dive. Not that guys aren't complex, but you guys do have some patterns. I'm just saying that's like
Yeah.
decades of that still last. Love you guys. I live with enough males in my family.
Yeah. Same,
But
sister. Live in a house of men.
you guys have your quirks, but I promise you there's some patterns. But
Yeah.
it's just really, really interesting to see what's coming out, to see the research that's happening now. And again, I feel like there are so many unanswered questions. And I feel like there are so many questions that we as women, or even our spouses, should be aware of to be able to ask to
Yeah,
further this.
absolutely. Yeah, this is not a conversation that is just for women, right? This is a conversation that needs to be held across the entire spectrum. Like, this is a conversation for humans because it absolutely does impact. Like, I have had women come to me, their marriages are completely destroyed. They are like, they're getting divorced and they're realizing, I was experiencing perimenopause symptoms. I didn't know it. It ruined my relationship. It made it a huge struggle. 1 in 10 women are leaving the workforce because of unsupported menopause and perimenopausal symptoms. I am one of those
Wow.
women. Yeah, it's huge. It has been huge, significant. It's having huge issues. And when you look at the leadership gap that exists between women and men at the highest levels, we lose women during childbearing years. We lose women again during perimenopause and menopause. And so it is evident that women are not being supported in the ways that are necessary for us to be able to continue to do all the things that we want to do. And everyone being part of this conversation is key to that. Lately, I've actually been feeling called to speak to men more about menopause, even than to women, because we also need that, like you were saying earlier, around the advocacy part for us. We're exhausted. There
Mm-hmm.
is already so much that we are managing in our bodies and in our lives. We need support around this. And it can save a relationship if you know and your partner knows, oh, she's experiencing perimenopause. These are some of the things that I am noticing, right? Even to be able to have that language of,
Yep.
like one of the strategies I teach is really just it's a communication strategy of knowing and naming, acknowledging, and then asking for help. So, for example, if I wake up in the morning and I have a vicious hormone headache that is like making it really difficult for me to function during the day, instead of pretending that I don't and just trying to push through and do what I need to do, I'm going to say to my colleague, my manager, my partner, whoever it is who needs to hear this information, hey, I have this really bad headache today. You might see it in me in all of these different ways, however it manifests for you. I'm going to need some help with this today. Like, I am not going to be able to it's going to take all of the energy that I have to make it through my workday. I'm not going to be able to make dinner tonight. And then you, as the partner, can say, I got that, and go to the grocery store, get what you need for dinner, come home, make dinner. That alone, like it sounds so simple, but that act of let me take something off of your plate without you having to plan it and tell me what it
Mm-hmm.
is like remarkable. The impacts of that in a relationship are far reaching.
Yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation. Okay, we
Oh,
might
yeah.
have to have a part two. I'm just saying because we could
Yes.
dive into this one. Oh yeah, no, that's something, and it's also something that women need to learn to be okay with asking for as well. And that was
Yes.
something that I have had to learn over the last several years. I mean, my boys are now 20 and 16. They're very capable of handling their own things. And it's been a thing lately where we have had conversations and I've told them, like, look, these are some things that I am doing. These are some things that I'm working on, which means I am focused more here than I'm able to here. So I need help with you doing this, and I realize that the more clear, concise direction that I can give them, not 15 things, but the clear, concise direction on like one or two specific items and just a gentle reminder, like, hey, do you got this? It has been taken care of. Like, I can't tell you how many times my kids are like, it's okay, I got dinner, I'll make it tonight. And then the other one jumps in and it's taken care of. And the rule in our house is whoever makes dinner doesn't clean dishes. And I'm like, I will clean dishes all day. Please cook for me. But it's,
Yeah.
I think this could be a whole nother conversation of how we have conversations in our household, not only in our relationship, but also with our children as well, whether they are girls or boys, because they need to understand where we are coming from, where we are at, and where we need help, because then we are also role modeling for them how to
Yes.
advocate for themselves as they are growing up. Okay, yep, that's an official. So Lisa,
Yeah.
just plan on being back again because we're just going to
Okay.
have a whole nother conversation around this one.
I would love
That is
to. Yes,
happening.
please.
So everybody get ready because part two is coming. Because there's so many things that we can touch base on here, and there's so many things that I feel like we could not only dive into, but also give simple tips for people on both sides to feel like, okay, I understand what's going on. Because I do feel like sometimes, men write us off because they're like, oh, she's just being hormonal. Oh, she's just being a woman. Okay, time out,
Hmm.
y'all, because you are hormonal as well. I'm just going to tell
Hmm.
you. It's just different, and you guys don't associate that way because you aren't taught that it's that way. So there's a whole conversation around communication and advocacy in your home to help each other as well, in a whole family dynamic as well.
Absolutely. It's so important. And bringing our children into the conversation. When you think about like the life cycle of our family, often when kids are teenagers and hormonal and are going through their own fluctuations, we are perimenopausal. And so that intersection of hormone fluctuation happening in our families has huge ramifications for how we interact with each other. So being really open and honest and having that communication, and like you said, it is an incredible act of leadership to say this is how we interact as humans. We are honest with each other. We trust each other with this information, and that when you have this information, we will support each other and work together instead of being like butting heads and working against each other.
Yep. Yeah. Oh my gosh, Lisa, you're just like a wealth of knowledge. I I have learned so much in this conversation. So I have so many more questions. I've got to shush my mouth so that we can go to a part two. So as we come to a close then, let me ask you this then. Do you have a quote or a piece of advice you would like to leave the audience with?
The biggest piece of advice I give people is trust yourself. You know yourself better than anyone else. And so when that little voice in the back of your mind starts asking questions or starts like just doing that little like tap, 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 there's something happening here, trust your body. We've been taught not to trust our bodies, to retreat and be in our brains. But this is the vessel that we are moving through. Listen to it and trust it.
That's, yeah. Such a great reminder. Well, Lisa, do me a favor then. Tell everybody where they can find you, how they can connect with you, and how they can be in your world.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram at Elbow. You can find me on all the social places. I'm sure that will also be in the show notes. My website is liberatedmenopause.ca. And my podcast is Transforming 45. So also hop over, check out Kat's episode over there. It's a really good one. And it's also a place where I share lots of midlife perspectives. So that's a really good place to connect. And then I have just, in exciting news, just completed, it's a mini course. It's super short, very accessible, and like for less than the cost of a night out at the movies. You can get this, that is the top 5 symptoms of perimenopause, how they will impact you in the workplace, and what you can do about it. So it's an awesome place to start. And my email address is lisa@liberatedmenopause.ca. So send me an email. I can send you that course. It's a brilliant place to get started on your journey.
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. And of course, we'll have all that information in the show notes, including your guide that you told me about as well.
Yeah.
So we'll make sure that we have that too, because that's going to my mom. I've got family members in my brain that I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be great for them. So I can't thank you enough, Lisa, for being a part of the podcast today and sharing just this wealth of knowledge that I feel like we are just now scratching the surface of.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. This is such a great conversation. Thank you.
Oh, of course. And to everybody else out there, oh my gosh, I hope you were taking notes. I hope you rewatch this. I hope you share this with someone in your life that you are aware of, because I guarantee you thought of at least 1 to 3 people, like I did when you were listening to this episode. This information needs to get out there. We need to be more aware of it. We need to be advocating for it. This is how more research gets done. This is how more people realize what is actually going on, instead of us just blaming it on the old school things that we've always blamed it on. And so make sure you are following Lisa. Go check out her podcast as well. And definitely check out all the information that we'll have in the show notes for her. This is going to be a continued conversation. So until next time, do one thing positive for someone each and every day and see the difference that it makes in your life. So until next time, have a fantastic day. Hello again, and thank you so much for being a part of the podcast today. If you enjoyed this episode and it brought tons of value, we ask that you please share, like, and subscribe. Your support means the world to us and helps us to reach even more inspiring entrepreneurs who can benefit from these powerful conversations. If you haven't already, be sure to leave a review on your favorite podcast platform, as this feedback is an amazing gift that fuels our growth and helps us to continually improve this podcast. Looking for an extra dose of inspiration and empowerment? Then be sure to connect with me on social media. You can find me at The Lotus Effect, where I share valuable resources and tips while sharing my own journey of being an entrepreneur. And if you're interested in learning more about my coaching programs and services, be sure to check out my website at the-lotus-effect.com. Once again, thank you so much for being a part of Real Chat with Kat. Your presence and support makes all the difference. Remember, whether you find yourself in the depths of the mud or on the path of growth, we all have a unique journey. And just like the lotus, some of us start in the dirtiest of mud, yet as we rise and grow, we blossom into something beautiful, unique, and truly one of a kind. To all of my visionaries out there, keep rising and growing as you create your own Lotus Effect.